Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Kamiz Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So the entire Obscura Operation Precon has been revealed. And today I'm going to be walking you through some fantastic upgrade options for the deck. So if you're looking to pick up this deck and power it up, this should help. I'm also going to be breaking the upgrades down into different budget tiers. I realize that many players have different budgets when it comes to Magic, so I hope this is helpful. But with all that said, let's jump into it. So the head of this precon is Kamiz, Obscura Oculus, a 2/3 Cephalid rogue that costs 1 white, blue, black. It has, whenever you attack, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. It connives. Then choose another attacking creature with lesser power. That creature gains double strike until end of turn. And again, connive is a new mechanic from this set, and basically when a creature connives, you draw a card, then discard a card, and if you discarded a non-land card, you get a +1/+1 counter on that creature. So this commander can do a lot of really interesting things when on the battlefield. Now, it is an attack trigger, but you don't have to attack with your commander to get it. It's just, whenever you attack, you get this trigger, and it is a very powerful one in the right situation. First up, making a creature unblockable can be incredibly valuable, especially when you've got different kinds of combat damage triggers whenever your creatures hit opponents, and there are a ton of them out there. And of course, I'll be talking about some of those in the upgrades. On top of that though, you also get to make a creature with lesser power have double strike until end of turn, which can be also incredibly deadly, and again, if you're able to get that creature through, can help double up on a combat damage trigger again. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do with this commander, and yeah, there's a lot of fantastic upgrades to consider for it. First up, let's talk about some of those creatures that have combat damage triggers that can be a great addition to this deck, with Nightveil Spectre at 91 cents, Zerasan at 17 cents, and Necropulse Regent at just 38 cents. Nightveil Spectre is a 2/3 Spectre with flying that has, when it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top card of their library. And of course, you can play cards exile with Nightveil Spectre. Now, Nightveil Spectre already has flying, which is a great form of evasion, which can get you through on a good amount of players. So, with that low power of just 2 power, you might want to consider making another creature unblockable and giving this double strike so that you can get that combat damage trigger twice. And keep in mind, this card does specify that you can play those cards. It doesn't just say you can cast them, so yeah, you can play lands off the top of your opponent's libraries on top of being able to cast spells. Next up, speaking of taking advantage of some of our opponent's things, let's talk about Zerasan the Trickster, a 4/4 Merfolk Rogue with Flash. Now, it does have pay 2 blue-black, return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand, put Zerasan the Trickster from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. And if you got another rogue that is attacking and getting through, great, you get its combat damage trigger when it hits. That being said, obviously your commander can make this unblockable, and this is going to be a very powerful effect when it hits because it says, when it deals combat damage to a player, you may put target permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. This is an incredible effect, and again, if you've got another way to get this through and maybe a way to give it that double strike with your commander, you can get that twice and that can be huge. And speaking of huge, well, your creatures can get absolutely massive thanks to Necropulse Regent, a 6/5 flying vampire that says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. So now when any of our creatures hit, they can get absolutely massive. And again, if our double striking creature gets through on an opponent, this can be absolutely absurd. Again, just think if we give Necropulse Regent double strike, which again already has flying, so it can get through on a lot of players, it hits for 6 damage, gets 6 counters. Then with that second part of the double strike, it hits again for 12 damage, gets 12 more counters, and now all of a sudden, it is a 24 power creature. So yeah, that can get pretty absurd with this commander. Moving on, let's talk about some effects that we can take advantage of when our creatures do get through with things like Mask of Memory, Deep Fathom Skulker, and Larceny. Mask of Memory comes in at 28 cents, and it says, whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw 2 cards. If you do, discard a card. This is going to be worth equipping on whatever creature that we either going to make unblockable or one that we just know that we can get through. This is fantastic card advantage with some card selection built in there too. Again, draw 2, discard 1. If we've got a dead card in our hand, we get rid of that and we replace it with 2 cards. And speaking of drawing cards though, Deep Fathom Skulker can do a ton of work for just 26 cents. It says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, and on top of that, we can pay 3 and 8 colors, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. So if we've got some extra mana lying around, and if we need to make a creature unblockable, obviously this can really help, but yeah, just with all the evasion we already have in this deck, and the ability to make a creature unblockable with our commander, we can draw a ton of cards with this. And on the opposite end of that, though, we've got Larceny, which is a 30-cent enchantment, and this thing can be brutal in this deck. It says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card from their hand. So, whereas we can gain card advantage from something like Deep Fathom Skulker, we can tip the scales even further with something like Larceny and take cards out of opponents' hands. In the right situation, we can draw a ton of cards and wipe our opponent's hands clean, and yeah, it's going to be really hard for them to recover from that. Moving on, we've got Duelist Heritage, which comes in at 95 cents, an enchantment for 2 and a white, and it says, whenever one or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. So, first up, keep in mind this is a great political card. It does not specify it has to be one of your creatures, and it doesn't specify it has to be on your turn. So essentially, you can utilize this on an opponent's turn to incentivize them to attack someone else with one of their creatures, and you're like, hey, you attack that player, I'll give your creature double strike so it can hit even harder. So obviously there's that angle to this card, but yeah, just in combination with our creatures, obviously this can be fantastic with all those combat damage triggers. Again, our commander can make one creature unblockable and give another one with lesser power double strike, and with this we can just be like, you know what, that unblockable creature that I've got, it also has double strike now too thanks to this. But of course, there are some things that we absolutely would love to get through with things like Virtus the Veiled at $1.96, Scytheclaw at 21 cents, and Vorpal Sword at 96 cents. Virtus the Veiled partners with Gorm the Great, but that doesn't matter because we're not in green. Regardless, it's a 1/1 with Death Touch, and it has, when it deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. So by making this unblockable, we can ensure that we can get this through and ensure that an opponent is going to lose a ton of life. And again, if we already have another way to get it through potentially and we give it double strike, we're going to make that player lose half their life once and then again. So even if they were at 40 life, they'd go down to what, 20 and then 10, and yeah, that's quite spicy. Speaking of which, there's Scytheclaw, which is an equipment, but it has living weapon, so when it enters the battlefield, we get a 0/0 germ that this is attached to. The equipped creature is going to get +1/+1, and whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. So again, this starts off as an incredibly deadly creature in this deck, essentially, and then yeah, even if that germ is dealt with, we can just attach this to something else and get that through and have fun opponents. And speaking of fun, Vorpal Sword is an incredible card in this deck. It's an equipment that says, equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has Death Touch. So even just with that, giving a creature +2/+0 and Death Touch can be very impactful. Again, if we give that creature double strike with our commander, Death Touch plus double strike can make that creature very difficult to deal with in combat since they hit first with that first strike damage and then again. Regardless though, the really spicy play with this card is of course by paying 5 black, it says until end of turn Vorpal Sword gains. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. Again, with a deck that can easily make a creature unblockable, good luck to your opponent once you get that kind of mana. Next up though, some other kind of combat damage triggers on creatures that you might want to consider come with cards like Grateful Apparition and Thrumming Bird. Grateful Apparition is just 22 cents and it's a 1/1 flyer that says when it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, proliferate. And then Thrumming Bird is basically the exact same thing, but it doesn't count planeswalkers, and it's 46 cents. Regardless, these can be incredibly impactful in this deck. Remember that when our creature attacks and we make them unblockable, that creature is conniving. So we draw and discard, and if we discard a non-land card, that creature gets a +1/+1 counter, which of course we can proliferate. And proliferating means that we can choose any number of permanents and or players with counters on them, then give each another kind of counter already there. So we can get counters on more and more creatures and grow those creatures throughout the game with these fantastic combat damage triggers. And of course, there are other great proliferate effects in these colors, like with Flux Channeler, a 57-cent card that says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, proliferate. This can help us out a ton throughout the game, and of course, with these proliferate effects, well, we can get incredibly deadly with infect creatures that work great with this commander, again, being able to give double strike or, unblockability. Cards like Septic Rats at 38 cents, Flesh Eater Imp at 28 cents, and Phyrexian Juggernaut at 23 cents are just a few that I'm going to highlight here, and they can be incredible in this deck if you want to go in that direction. Septic Rats is a 2/2 rat with infect that says, when it attacks, if defending player is poisoned, it gets ++1 until end of turn. So if that player is already poisoned, great, this is going to hit even harder. And of course, it's going to hit even harder, if we attack and make it unblockable, and we have a Connive, and we discard a non-land card to give it a counter, so yeah, that's one way to help it hit harder. But of course, if we've got another way to get it through, well, double strike can be incredibly deadly with this. Speaking of which, Flesh Eater Imp is a 2/2 flying infect imp that says sacrifice a creature, Flesh Eater Imp gets ++1 until end of turn. So this is an evasive creature that can be game-ending very easily in this deck. I mean, if we really want to, we can take a player out with one shot with this by just saying, okay, I'm going to swing with this, I'm going to give it double strike, I will sacrifice 3 creatures, now it's a 5/5 with double strike, and in fact, have fun with 10 poison counters. Speaking of which, Phyrexian Juggernaut does not have evasion like Flesh Eater Imp, but it is a 5/5 that has to attack each turn if able, and it has infect, of course. So this only takes 2 hits to actually take out a player, and of course we can keep making it unblockable and, conniving with it too, which is just lovely. Or, if we do have another way to get it through, awesome. 5/5 double striking infect, goodbye opponent. Or, with another way to give it double strike with something like Duel's Heritage, this is a one-shot on any opponent by making it unblockable with our commander on top of giving it double strike. And of course, there are plenty of other fantastic infect cards with cards like Tainted Strike at 96 cents and Corrupted Conscience at 75 cents. So if you're looking to go in that direction, definitely consider these. I mean, Tainted Strike is a fantastic combat trick. It says target creature gets +1/+0 and gains infect until end of turn. And just being an instant for a single black mana, yeah, this can come out of nowhere. I mean, if you're getting your double striking creature through and they've got 4 power, all of a sudden, now they've got 5 power and infect, and that player is gone. And then Corrupted Conscience says you control enchanted creature has infect. So now we can just do the lovely play by taking out an opponent with their own creature. Again, if they've got a massive creature already, cool, we'll take it and we'll make it unblockable. Or, if they've got a creature that is already evasive, cool, we'll take it and give it double strike. So yeah, there are plenty of fantastic infect upgrades if you want to consider those. Now, a non-infect upgrade that is absolutely incredible in this deck is Metamai the Ageless, which comes in at just $1.51. It's a 4/4 Flying Sphinx that costs 4 white/blue, and it says, when it deals combat damage to a player, take an extra turn after this one, Metamai the Ageless can attack during extra turns. So, even if flying isn't enough to get this creature through, yeah, making this unblockable with our commander to get an extra turn is huge. But of course, if flying is enough evasion to get through on at least one opponent, which it generally is, let's give this double strike. Because not only are we hitting that unlucky player for 8 damage, but we get 2 extra turns after this one. So yeah, either way, again, either having to make it unblockable or giving it double strike can be fantastic plays. But now let's move on to our next budget category with cards that are between $2 and $10 with cards like Guild-Pact Informant, Thada Adel Inquisitor, and Wrinkled Master of Pranks. Guild-Pact Informant comes in at $2.30, and it's a 1/1 fairy rogue with flying that has, when it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, proliferate. So again, another great Flappration type card for this deck, which again can help out in a lot of ways, and yeah, if you're going for the infect route, have fun with that. Moving on, a creature with a very spicy combat damage trigger is Thada Adel, which comes in at $6.56. It's a 2/2 with Island Walk that has, when it deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for an artifact card and exile it. Then that player shuffles their library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. So generally, at least one player is going to have an island in play, but if they don't, yeah, let's make this unblockable to guarantee we can get through. And if a player does have an island, well, let's give this double strike instead so we can hit twice and steal 2 artifacts. Again, even if just one of those is Soul Ring, that is a big play to ramp us for a ton. And then Wrinkled Master of Pranks costs $4.44, and it's a 3/3 fairy rogue with flying and haste. It has, when it deals combat damage to a player, choose any number. Each player discards a card, each player loses 1 life and draws a card, each player sacrifices a creature. So depending on the situation that you're in, you're going to want to pick, some of these, all these, or whatnot. And again, if you give double strike to this, you get to do that twice. Obviously, you can utilize this to help decimate boards, decimate hands, or, draw some cards as well. And speaking of decimation, next up let's talk about Spawning Kraken, which comes in at $3.79. It's a 6/6 Kraken that has, whenever a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or a Serpent you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. I mean, just think about this series of plays. Obviously, this doesn't have any evasion, but it is a 6/6, so it can hit pretty hard. You make it unblockable with your commander. You connive, you make it slightly bigger. It hits a player for 7 damage, and then you get a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. Next turn, you have a 9/9 Kraken that you can make unblockable. Then you make your Spawning Kraken have double strike because, yes, your Spawning Kraken has lesser power than that. You swing with both, and maybe your 9/9 Kraken gets blocked, but your Spawning Kraken's gonna get through for now, 14 damage? And of course, on top of that, you're getting that trigger twice for 2 more 9/9 Krakens. So yeah, this can get out of hand in absolutely no time. But of course, then there's Phage the Untouchable, which is fantastic with this commander, a $6.02 card. Phage is a 4/4 avatar minion that has, when it enters the battlefield, if you didn't cast it from your hand, you lose the game, so make sure you do that. On top of that, when Phage deals combat damage to a player, destroy that creature, it can't be regenerated, and most importantly, when Phage deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. Again, we've already talked about other creatures out there like Virtus that, make someone lose half their life, but this one just, no, you just lose. So you don't even need double strike on Phage, obviously, you just say, nope, Phage, you are unblockable, have fun taking out that player. Moving on, we've got a lot of ways to generate an absurd amount of value with this deck with cards like Coastal Piracy, Reconnaissance Mission, and Bite in a Thassa. Coastal Piracy comes in at $4.03, and it says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Reconnaissance Mission comes in at $2.07, and it basically does the exact same thing, but we could also just cycle it for 2 if we wanted to. And then Bite in a Thassa, again, pretty much does the exact same thing, but it's a $3.21 card that says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, and by paying 1 in a blue and tapping it, creatures your opponents control attack this turn if able. So on top of having the potential to draw us an absurd amount of cards with this deck, we can also put an opponent into, well, let's just say an awkward position. We can force an opponent to swing into an awful situation and also leave themselves wide open for everyone else. But yeah, with any of these in play, you can draw an absurd amount of cards with this deck. And speaking of an absurd amount of cards, well, there's Teferi's Ageless Insight. This comes in at $2.33, and it's a legendary enchantment that says, if you would draw a card except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So, in combination with those previous cards, now whenever one of our creatures gets through and hits an opponent, that is 2 cards drawn instead of just 1. And when I say just 1, I mean that's still a ton of value. That being said, with our double striking creature, if it gets through again, we've got plenty of evasive creatures to give double strike, that's 4 cards from 1 creature in that same scenario. On top of that though, just keep in mind even how this works with Connive. Instead of drawing 1, discarding 1, now we draw 2, discard 1, so instead of card selection, this is just straight up card advantage. So yeah, Teferi's Ageless Insight can make a massive impact on our deck. Next up though, let's talk about some cards that could impact this deck in different ways with cards like Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive, Akroma's Will, and True Conviction. Tetsuko Umezawa is a $2.15 card that says creatures you control of power toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. So this just makes a lot of our low to the ground creatures essentially unblockable, and yeah, if that's one of our creatures that has a great combat damage trigger and we give it double strike, well, have fun just getting it through. Obviously, when considering this card for your deck though, make sure you're looking through to see how many 1 power or 1 toughness creatures you have. Next up though, we've got Akroma's Will, which comes in at $6.15, and it's an instant that says choose 1 if you control a commander. As you cast a spell, you may choose both. Creatures you control gain Flying, Vigilance, and Double Strike until end of turn, and or creatures you control gain Lifelink, Indestructible, Protection from all colors until end of turn. This is the type of game-ending spell that can just hit incredibly hard with this deck. Essentially make all of your creatures hit harder, be unstoppable and unblockable, and have fun opponents trying to stop this. And of course, just keep in mind with that double strike and making them essentially unblockable, if you're not finishing your opponents off with this, you can get a ton of value with all those combat damage triggers. Speaking of which, True Conviction comes in at $3.76, and it says creatures you control have double strike and lifelink. Now, lifelink is nice, but obviously double strike is what we care about more with this, because again, we can take advantage of those combat damage triggers even more. Moving forward though, let's talk about some equipment like Wand of Orcus in Grafted Exoskeleton. Wand of Orcus comes in at $7.90 and it says whenever equipped creature attacks or blocks, it and zombies you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. So Death Touch can of course help us out, especially in combination with Double Strike, but more importantly, it says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Yeah, this can get out of hand really quickly. Again, we can just make a creature unblockable and yeah, get a ton of tokens just right there. Or again, if we've already got an evasive creature that can get through and we can give that creature double strike, well, you can make twice as many tokens as you'd be able to. Next up though, Grafted Exoskeleton is an equipment that helps out in a very different way. It costs $4.62 and it says, equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has Infect. So again, of course, just put this on any creature, make it unblockable, and start hitting for some poison counters. Or, if we've got an evasive creature already out there, and maybe say one that has 3 or more power, now they have 5 or more power, and double strike when we swing, and goodbye opponent. Yeah, Infect can be a very deadly direction to take this commander. But now let's move on to our High Rollers budget category, which includes cards that are $10 or more. And yeah, first up, I'm going to highlight Ink Eyes Servant of Oni. Ink Eyes comes in at $29.17. It's a 5/4 rat ninja that has, when it deals counter damage to a player, you may put target creature card from that player's graveyard on the battlefield under your control. So yeah, just by making this unblockable, we can start reanimating creatures, or again, if we've got other ways to get it through, make sure you give it double strike and start reanimating twice as many creatures. Next up though, of course, I've gotta highlight Skittles. That's right, Skithrix the Blight Dragon, a $13.02 card. Skittles is a 4/4 flying infect dragon skeleton that by paying just a black mana, we can give it haste until end of turn, or by paying black, we regenerate it. I mean, even just think of this play. We make it unblockable and we connive with it to get a counter on it. It hits someone for 5. That player gets 5 poison counters. Then next turn, let's say again we can get this through on a different opponent if we really want to take out someone else, well, we just give it double strike. It's hitting for 10. Or of course, again, if you've got other ways to bump it, or again, Duelist Heritage in play or something like that to give it double strike in the first place, this again is just a one shot right away. Yeah, did I mention Infect is a direction you can take with this deck? And now, of course, some other cards to consider that can be incredibly expensive are the swords, with cards like Sword of Truth and Justice, Sword of Fire and Ice, and Sword of Feast and Famine, just to name a few. Sword of Truth and Justice costs $25.23, and yeah, that's an expensive card, and it's on the lower end of some of the swords. Regardless, it has equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from white and from blue. So already by pumping a creature, we can help get this creature through on some players, and we might not have to make that creature unblockable on those players. So have fun giving that creature double strike and hitting for even more. And whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, then you proliferate. Again, if you're double striking that, you get double, and have fun with all those counters. Next up, Sword and Fire and Ice is going to get +2/+2 and protection from red and from blue. On top of that, whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to any target and you draw a card. So yeah, that can be incredibly impactful and give you a lot of value throughout the game. Speaking of which, Sword of Feast and Famine is pretty absurd, especially when you've got a creature with double strike getting through with it. It gives +2/+2 and protection from black and from green. And of course, whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you tap all lands you control. So again, with double strike, that player is discarding 2 cards and you untap all your lands twice. So yeah, if you've got some instants or whatnot to cast right then and there, have fun doing that. And of course, on your second main phase, having all of your lands up again. But yeah, swords are quite expensive, but of course, in a deck that focuses on combat damage to players, I thought I would mention them. And speaking of expensive, one final card I want to highlight is Hatred, which is a $45 card for a reason. It's an old card that is on the reserve list, and yeah, I'm going to read its Oracle text. It says, as it will cost to cast this spell, pay X life, target creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn. So yeah, in a deck where you can make a creature unblockable, essentially you can just pay 5 mana and take out one of your opponents. As long as you've got more life than that player, and that's what you want to do. Or, if you're getting that double striking creature through, pay half as much life essentially to take that player out. Or again, in combination with infect creatures. Yeah, this card has a lot of potential in this deck, but again, it is a very expensive card. Now, keep in mind that you can find the links for these upgrades in the description below, and they are broken out by those different budget categories. So there's a link for $2 and less, there's a link for between $2 and $10, and there's a link for $10 and more. Also in the description below, there's a link for some potential cards to remove for some of those upgrades. Again, when you're adding cards into your deck and you're taking cards out of your deck, there's a lot of factors to consider. It comes down to your playstyle, your personal preferences, and your meta, so make the decisions that are right for you. There's absolutely no right or wrong way to upgrade a deck. So make the decisions that you want to make. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.